What's going on, everybody? What's going on? It is Saturday, December 14th, 2024, and we are back with another midday stream here on the Torian Rain Reloaded channel. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to go ahead and hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button. If you are new to the channel, I'm glad that you are here. Hit the bell twice to be notified whenever I upload a new video or go live. And if that doesn't work for you, make sure you join the Discord and you will get the notification in there. So y'all see the title. And I told y'all, after the very intense live we had yesterday, let's lighten it up a little bit, but still have to check something or someone rather for these comments. But before we get into all of that, let me acknowledge the people who are here so far in the chat. We got WJ Luckett, Neo Panther, DJ, Nora Mumine, Ozzy Edwards, Reparations Nations, Dimpleface, DSA1, SD Johnson, Dark Samurai, Irvin Green, Isaac George, Kush God Returns, Sabadon 100. And also shout out to Sabadon for the Cash App. We got Miss Nisi, Eddie Foster, Tamika's Den, Bills Fan 1970, Miss Brooklyn, Tycee Roland, Ricky Ross, Blue Exodus, RBJ, Casey Malone, Letitia, Janesta, and shout out to Ozzy for being a member for 27 months. He said it's time to go in on this bug-eyed delusional fool. When you say bug-eyed delusional fool, take out delusional, and it reminds me of Aunt Esther from Sanford and Son when she used to always be going in on Fred. We got my online digital auntie in the house, Moochie. We got Wallow J. Who else is in here? Black Trini Girl to the Bone, Rokumuro, Black Spider, Jay Wishbone, Robert Brown, DC Precise, LOM, Nini64, Great as Me, The Black Box. There's a lot of y'all in here today. We got Black and PGH Big Dog. Shout out to each and every person that is in here right now. So this is only going to be, it's only one article for this. I tried to see if there was anything else, but all of this is going to be covered in one article. So it probably won't even be that long of a stream. I think we can cover this in about an hour, probably less than that. So let me go ahead and share the screen. And shout out to my subscriber. I don't know exactly who it is, but one of my subscribers had left a comment on a video that I did, I think last week or maybe a couple days ago, and they said, Torian, can you do a video about the comments that Jaleel White made? And I was like, what comments? Because I was unaware of it. And then they said what he said, and then I typed his name into Google, and it led me to this article right here. And I was like, oh, really? Like, this completely kind of caught me off guard. Like, when I saw this, I was like, really, Jaleel White? This is where you want to take it? This is where you want to go with this narrative? Okay, fine, we'll go there. But I'm telling you, he's fighting an uphill battle that he can't win. So Jaleel White, who we all know famously for playing Steve Urkel on the late, I could say the late 80s to the late 90s of a run, the sitcom Family Matters, because Family Matters came out in 89. A lot of people think Family Matters got started in 90, but it actually came out in 89 and ran until 1998, which is very good for a sitcom with an all-black cast to have a run that long, to run almost an entire decade. So that's successful in and of itself, which means it definitely for sure got syndication, because back then there were 22 episode seasons. But Jaleel White came out and said that he feels that Family Matters was overlooked in the black community because it didn't tell hood stories. And I'm sitting here saying to myself, is this dude for real? Because I remember when I was in school, when I was in elementary school, when Family Matters came on TGIF, which was Thank God It's Friday, on ABC, it was in that lineup. When we came back to school the next day, or not the next day, but on that Monday, we always talked about Family Matters. So I'm trying to figure out where is this coming from? And it was a very popular show. Clearly, it was very popular to run for 9 seasons. Now, it ran for 8 seasons on ABC, and the last season ran on CBS. But this statement from him completely caught me off guard when he said that it was overlooked by the black community because it didn't tell hood stories. And then the examples that he gave of other black sitcoms were not good examples. Some of y'all are aware of the story, so you probably already know what shows he's referring to, but it's going to mention it in this article because I already skimmed over it. And I know what shows he mentioned. And when we get there, it's absolutely ridiculous. Again, I don't know where this animus is coming from, but okay, fine, whatever. Let's get into it. Jaleel White recently shared his thoughts on his star-making sitcom Family Matters during a fireside chat at the Wilmington Library, coinciding with the release of his memoir, Growing Up Urkel. During the discussion, White, who starred as love-struck nerd Steve Urkel on the show, revealed his take that the classic sitcom is often overlooked by black audiences in comparison to other 90s shows because it didn't tell hood stories. Now, let's think about this for a second. Let's start naming off a lot of black sitcoms back in the 90s during the run of Family Matters. Again, remember, Family Matters came out in 89. It ran to 1998. So it took over the entire, I guess you could say the entire decade for the most part. So you had Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You had A Different World. You had The Cosby Show kind of came in the 80s, but it got canceled in the 90s. You had Hanging with Mr. Cooper. You had Martin, Living Single. I just named about 5 shows that didn't deal with quote unquote hood stories. I'm trying to figure out where was he headed with this statement. Hood stories? You had The Parenthood. Speaking, if you want to talk about that was only hood in title, but it was far from a hood story. The Wayans brothers. Now, Girlfriends came out in 2000. You had Rock, Sister, Moesha. Like, I'm naming a bunch of shows that came out in the 90s with black casts that were not hood stories because none of them were. What is he talking about? Some of them barely had a hood storyline. Some of them did, but it wasn't the encompassing of the entirety of the show. It might have been a storyline that lasted maybe 1 or 2 episodes, but it didn't take over the entire show. But if we want to go there, if y'all remember, it was an episode of Family Matters where it was a gang that trashed Rachel's place. They badly beat up Eddie. And then Steve had to infiltrate the gang as like an informant to help take the gang down. That was an episode right there, if y'all remember it. Then there was another episode that happened, but it wasn't a gang, but it was like you could say it was a biker gang. It wasn't a hood story, but it was a biker gang. Then there was another one where the kids were getting bullied in the park by another gang, and he had to step in the transformation chamber to turn into Bruce Lee. But we're not going to sit up here and say, oh, because they had those episodes, that Family Matters is somehow a hood story. So again, this is, in my opinion, this is very unwarranted projection on Jaleel White's side. Oh yes, Mr. Williams, the episode where Lori got her jacket stolen. And that was an intense episode because that was talking about gun violence. Because didn't her friend get shot in the episode because she didn't give her the shoes? But then again, a lot of black sitcoms back in the day had storylines where they touched on serious topics. A Different World was notorious for doing that. They had an episode dealing with sexual assault. The one with Tisha Campbell with the AIDS, that was a very deep episode. You had one dealing with racism. Like, A Different World really went there. But when they had the balls to do that Rodney King one, that's what got the show canceled. Fresh Prince even had moments where they were dealing with racism, dealing with gun violence, drugs. A lot of shows did that back in the day to show, okay, we can't always make it too light. Let's throw something in there to let people know we are aware of what's going on out here. That's when they brought more realism to it. And a lot of black sitcoms back in the day tended to do that. But let me continue. Being a part of the TGIF brand sometimes makes you feel like you don't completely belong in the pantheon of blackness, White told moderator Randall Law. Blackness has been treated as a very monolithic experience in entertainment. If it's not a hood story, it's not a black story. And sometimes I feel left out of that. So because you was in the TGI lineup, now let's think about this. I can't remember every show in the TGIF lineup, but Family Matters, I believe, was the only show in that lineup that was a pretty much all black cast. Every other show, I believe, in the TGIF lineup was a majority white casted show. So they definitely stood out like a sore thumb. But the thing is, that didn't mean that black audiences did not watch your show. Now think about the show. I'm getting ahead of myself because it's a major point that I do want to make. He went on to say, if there's ever a poll and they say, oh, what are your favorite black shows? Martin is in there, Living Single, or any of those kind of shows. I already know we're coming in last. He joked. How would you even know that? Now, let's start with this part right here. I don't know why Jaleel White is even complaining, because let's just use the three shows, Martin, Living Single, and Family Matters. Out of all of those shows, only one of them had crossover appeal, and that was Family Matters. Family Matters crossed over with various general audiences, whereas unfortunately, as great as Martin and Living Single was, it only got pigeonholed into black households for the most part. Not saying that people of other groups aren't familiar with Martin or Living Single, but let's talk about Living Single for a second here. And some of y'all probably know where I'm going with this. Living Single got ripped off because of Friends. Living Single came out in 1993, and Friends came right after it in 1994. And people was like, wait a minute. Friends is nothing more than a whitewashed version of Living Single. And people called that out years ago. It got to the point where even they had to admit it. But guess what show ended up being more successful? Friends. Friends stayed on the air for like 10 years. Living Single stayed on for like what, 5? But you ask anybody, and they'll tell you Living Single was the better show. Martin was a part of Fox's, I guess you could say, urban renewal. I call that the digital urban renewal, where because you remember how Fox at one point was considered to be, it was the younger company, but they had the urban like shows, like quote unquote urban shows on there. Martin was a part of that. And Living Color was a part of that. The only pretty much, and then you had The Simpsons on there. I think I know Married with Children was on there. Now let me tell you about something about Married with Children. A lot of people don't know. Married with Children was actually the showrunner for Married with Children. One of them was a black man. Most of the people do not know that. And I said that would explain why Al Bundy talks the way that he does, and why a lot of black people kind of resonated with him, because it was a black guy that was literally writing those lines. But going back to the topic at hand, Fox was that show, was that network, and then UPN came out. And then that became the urban network. That's where you had Moesha, the Parkers, and then eventually In the House went on there after being on NBC. But then when Debbie Allen left, then they went to UPN. WB was kind of in that same category too, because you had the Parenthood on there, Sister Sister was on there, and then Smart Guy, which was a spinoff of Sister Sister. But now WB and UPN, the quote unquote urban networks, combined now to make the CW, and you saw what kind of shows those spawned when the CW became a thing. They had the game on there briefly, but then the game got canceled, and then it got completely it became a completely quote unquote DC superhero show network up until a few years ago when they canceled most of the shows. Yeah, Mark, those networks merged. CW and UPN merged to make CW. And when that merge happened, a lot of those shows on UPN got canceled. But let me continue. I'm gonna acknowledge everyone's super chat when I'm done getting through the article. He goes on to say, but if there's ever a poll and it's just your favorite family shows, suddenly we rank really high. So it's kind of interesting how we look at ourselves even as Black folks. Who is this we that you're referring to, Jaleel? Because right now you are only talking and speaking for yourself. I don't think many Black people, but you know what? There's issues with every show. No show is perfect. Granted, some people had issues with Family Matters. I'm seeing people write in the chat the issues they had with the show. That doesn't mean they didn't like the show. I'm sure everybody in this chat watched Family Matters, and my chat is pretty much all Black. So I don't know who he's directing this to. Again, this is nothing more than projection. He said, listen to White break it down around the 7:30 to us. Well, it says, oh, they removed it, so we can't play it, but it is what it is. He says, many took issue with White implying that shows like Martin and Living Single are hood, with one observer writing on X or Twitter, Living Single does not have hood storylines. They are literally all Black professionals who live in a brownstone in New York. Khadijah owns her own magazine. Max is an effing attorney. And we'll go on from there. Sinclair was Khadijah's, her cousin, her assistant / actress. Regine, she worked in a boutique, but then she later ended up working on a soap opera as a seamstress. Kyle was a stockbroker. Overton was the janitor or the superintendent of the building that they lived in. All of them had careers. None of them were bums by any measure. Let's talk about Martin. Martin was a radio host and he got his own TV show. Gina and Pam worked in a marketing firm. Cole, I think he cleaned planes. And even though we didn't know what Tommy did, Tommy definitely wasn't bummy. He wasn't always there looking for a handout. I think eventually by the end of the series, he eventually did get a job, even though we still kind of don't know what he did, but he was still, he was well off somehow. And I think they just played that as part of the storyline. Every time Tommy said, I got a job, and we always said it was a wait for the audience to respond with, Tommy, you ain't got no job. Let's see. Others shared their takes that Family Matters simply doesn't hold up as well as the other shows of the decade, with one fan of White's writing. As a fan of both Jaleel and the show, he's wrong. Family Matters at its core was just cheesy and became almost unwatchable by its 7th season, and would have been canceled by season 2 had it not been for him. I think a lot of people agree, because the storyline behind it is the episode that Jaleel White comes in as Steve Urkel. He was only supposed to be a one-off character. He was only supposed to be a one-off character as far as one episode. And then he was not supposed to come back. But the audience loved him. I was reading somewhere where they said that between takes, when they had live studio audiences, it was a fraternity that was in the audience. And during the breaks, they were out there chanting Steve's name. So that's when they knew and they got on that phone and said, look, they love this kid. Find a way to keep him in there. We'll start him off as a reoccurring character, give him a line here, a line there. And then by the next season, he became a regular. And then they started to center the show around him. That's why this person said it became cheesy, because the show's called Family Matters. It's not called Steve Urkel and everybody else. If they would have spread it around more and gave them more storylines, then it would have appealed more. But because they did that, because the ratings were always so good because of him, that's what started to make people fall back a little bit. And then, of course, they upped the ante and took it a step further when they made him put on the dress and be Myrtle Urkel, and at such a very young age. Others shared their takes that I already read that part. It says other shows were more captivating, but he created a character that has been loved for decades. Despite his thoughts on Family Matters' popularity or lack thereof in the black community, White does believe that his character planted seeds for today's flourishing black nerd culture. Any brother that grew up in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, he was told that he looked like me. He continued. He was called Urkel, and he didn't look anything like me, guaranteed, but still his peers would find a way to call him Urkel, and even girls to that extent. So it's really humbling to see how far nerd culture has come. Now, see, that part right there, if he would have just stuck with this, what he just said right here, because I actually agree with him on that part. If he would have just stuck on this part where he was talking about like nerd culture, like, you know, black nerds and everything like that, then I would have agreed with that. But talking about how the show didn't resonate with the black community because it didn't tell hood stories, that was, again, like I said before, unwarranted projection. And exactly who was you telling this to? Because again, like I said, everybody in this chat watched Family Matters at some point in their life, whether they watched it when it was a live show or when it was in syndication. Good question, Mark. He said, what is a hood story, though? I wish that was a question that the interviewer would have asked him. He was called Urkel, and he didn't look anything like me, guarantee, but still is. Okay, I already read that part. He says, and it's really not nerd culture, it's smart culture, it's hobbyist culture, it's skateboarders. I could have never known in a million years that I could be the face of that. But yeah, all in all, Jaleel White, that was not a good take. And you had to have known that it wasn't. And you had to also know that people were going to come down on you for that take, especially black people who watched that show. I know I did because I've seen every episode of Family Matters back in the day when it was new. I practically grew up with that show. Never in a million years, but I think, oh, that black people didn't embrace it because it didn't tell hood stories. He made it seem like these shows were replicating Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, to an extent, Poetic Justice, Belly. What else? Anything that we would deem as hood classics. Those were not sitcoms. Those were movies. But anyway, y'all, like I told you, it was only one article to that. I think I pretty much got the point across, but I have just now dropped the link in the chat. If anybody would like to come up and speak, feel free to go ahead. We got 283 people in this chat. Make sure y'all go ahead and hit that like button. I'd appreciate it. Wallow, what's going on?
What's going on, Torian? What's going on, everybody in the chat? This is a prime example where you need to learn you need to think before you speak. Like, dude, like, it's not like your core audience was black people. That was your core. That was your base. Now you don't pissed off your base. Like, if you really think about it, it's like Family Matters, like legit is like a top 10 like sitcom for us, but for black people. Like, it's not like we don't like the show. Some people thought it was corny, and it had a lot of corniness to it because of him. It wasn't that funny until his character started to emerge, in my opinion. Ain't nothing wrong with that. It's just the truth. Like, you let's take the example for Martin. Martin wasn't a hood. None of these shows were hood shows. Even if you go into the 2000s, none of these shows were hood shows. They was like middle class shows at best.
Yeah.
So for him to say that, it's like, dude, like, what are you talking about? What, you mad because your character didn't turn into Roger from Sister or something? Is that the issue? I think it's an issue where he kind of felt like he's not like a standard or something. It's like, dude, ain't nobody saying that. It's just saying that we just think it's a good show. We just think other shows are better than yours. That's just our opinion. You don't like that. Why are you getting salty for? And I do agree. Somebody should ask me, what is a hood story? Because none of these shows all the black shows, I would say all the way up till they, till they went off the air, none of them were hood stories. The movies were hood stories. You can say a good half of them were hood. Well, I ain't say half, but most of them were hood stories. But none of the TV shows had no hood story background. The Jeffersons talked about getting out of the East Side. That's about it. But other than that, there wasn't a quote unquote hood story in any of these black sitcoms. I don't know where he got that from. But I'm gonna land my plane there, Torian. B1.
B1. And before I bring up the next person, I forgot I gotta acknowledge these super chats. Shout out to Ozzy for the 5. He said, "In the ill-fated homeboys, not a space." I appreciate you. Alanda said, "Episode of Fresh Prince when the white female college president ripped up Will and Carlton's enrolled application because they were black." Exactly. Man Cub Studios 34, I appreciate you. He says, although Jaleel White was famous for Family Matters, he kind of made the Sonic fan base come together because he voiced the Hedgehog in 3 cartoons. Yeah, I forgot about that. Jaleel White did do the voice of Sonic in the animated Sonic the Hedgehog series back in the day, and he was doing that while he was on Family Matters. So he was making money 2 different ways at the same time. So he was real busy during that run. Thank you for bringing that up because I definitely forgot he was the voice of Sonic. And shout out to DeMarcus for the 5. He says Family Matters is a black-washed version of Saved by the Bell. I'm not entirely sure I could put Family Matters as a black-washed version of Saved by the Bell. Well, in the instance of, you can I think I know where you're headed with that because you had Screech, who was a nerd or a geek on Saved by the Bell, and he was chasing after Lisa, and then you had Steve Urkel, who was a nerd, chasing after Laura. And ironically, both of them are black, and then both of their names begin with an L. But I don't necessarily see it that way because one was, dealing with more with high school and teenagers, and one was dealing with a core family in the city of Chicago. So I don't really, and then both of them came out around the same time too. So I'm not entirely sure if that's the case, but that's your take on it. And also shout out to DeMarcus for the 2. He said, who was a better character, Urkel or Carlton? Many will definitely say Carlton for sure, because even though he had his moments, he definitely had some interesting things happen with his character where he kind of came around a little bit. He was still kind of iffy, but I think he was more of a well-written character because he went through, we've all watched Fresh Prince. Carlton went through some stuff, especially the episode where he took them that speed. Woo, the speed, the one where he had the gun and a whole bunch of other stuff. So when he checked, one of my favorite episodes with Carlton was when he checked that fraternity leader. That was one of my favorite moments from him. But let me go ahead and get into the next person. Let's see who's coming up next. Oh, we got AW1. What's going on?
Hey, what's up, Chad? What's up, Torian?
What's going on?
Yeah, I'm disappointed what he said, man, because a lot of black folks did look up to him. I grew up in that era. Like I said, I'm old enough. I might sound old now, but I ate his cereal.
Mm-hmm. I don't think I had a cereal.
Yeah.
I had the doll though, the one where you pull the string. And he says, "Did I
you
do
had that doll?
Yeah, I did.
My bad. Hey, what did it say? Tell me.
It said, "Did I do that?" That was what it said. Did I do that?
Oh yeah. I've never seen that doll too. It's like it was so funny, and I remember like someone as a kid, someone had it. It's just the way it looked and how goofy it looked and stuff. I was like, I wanted one myself as a kid, but yeah, I like this guy because I can kind of relate because I was teased a lot. I mean, I was teased as a kid too, and I was skinny. But yeah, it's just disappointing here. I mean, not even just him, but like even you just mentioned Carlton. He said that stuff too, man.
Yeah, because Carlton, like he wasn't. How can I put it? Carlton had he was like an elitist nerd. Like
Yeah,
I could not stand his character in the first season because he was so green to a lot of things, and then Will had to come in there and like let him know what it was. But then as time got on, they loosened his character up a little bit more, and they had him be around Will a lot, so you could see Will was rubbing off of him in certain aspects to the point where he wasn't as annoying. And that's what you're supposed to do. Your character is supposed to
definitely.
have growth, but that also goes and attributes to the writers.
Right. And I'll say this about Jaleel. It did get stale because it's like what KD said earlier. He it wasn't. I mean, when they brought Myra
Mm-hmm.
on that show, Michelle Thomas, may God rest her soul. She yeah, she definitely elevated him.
Yeah, everyone because
Having someone that really cared for him.
everybody really liked the Myra character because, and I think that's a thing a lot of people was complaining about because it's like you have this character who has been basically stalking, like let's call it what it is. This one character
No, she was obsessed.
for most of the show's run, and then you bring in this character, and they said, you know what, we need to bring in an actual love interest for Steve because this having him constantly chase after Laura is getting old. So let's bring in this character, and they brought in Michelle Thomas as Myra, a girl who actually genuinely liked him for all his nerdiness, all his weirdness, and all stuff like that. And it's like, Steve, here you have this girl right here who likes you for you, who's not going to turn you down and not run away from you and not say things about you, and she's pretty. Like Michelle Thomas was gorgeous. Like you said, God rest her soul. My dad loved Michelle Thomas, and
wow.
and when to see how they did it, and even still with how they wrote it, he still kind of pushed her away. But I see what they did because it's like now Steve sees from the aspect of how he is when it comes to Laura, when she kind of like curves him, and now he sees it from his perspective when he curves Myra. Eventually he does break down and he does end up getting with her, but they still went back and had them break up so he could end up getting with Laura, in which they end up getting married.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't like that. Understandably too. But yeah, like I said, I'm all right. I'm gonna just say this and then leave. But yeah, I'm very disappointed in what he said, man. Because like a lot of us did watch that show. Just be quiet, bro. All right, good. Have a good day, Delane.
You too. Shout out to AW1. But yeah, Michelle Thomas was very gorgeous, and it's very unfortunate she passed away so young from stomach cancer back in '98. And it's crazy because she passed away the same year that Family Matters got canceled. That's why a lot of people didn't know because Michelle Thomas, well, Myra ended up becoming a regular. She was in the opening credits, but people didn't know that a lot of the times because she wasn't in some of the episodes was because she was going through what she was going through with that cancer. And then she got it treated and it was gone. And then after the show got canceled, she did a little bit on The Young and the Restless, and then the stomach cancer came back and it was worse. And she, to the point where she couldn't recover, and she ended up passing away. And for those who did not know, yes, Michelle Thomas was actually engaged to Malcolm Jamal Warner, where they met on the Cosby Show. That's where they met, and they were actually engaged to get married. Next, we got Samuel. What's going on?
Hey, Torian, what's going on? B1, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can see what Jaleel was talking about, but then he doesn't still understand that Family Matters is still one of the greatest TV shows in history and this and that. I think what he was more upset about was is that it was predominantly, or I think it was just all white writers that used to write the stories and things like that. And I think he wanted Family Matters to kind of take, more of a key of like the direction that Fresh Prince was going into and in the house and these other black shows that were going on during the time too. So I think that's what he was kind of coming from. Not to say that, he was completely like, demeaning, Family Matters and this and that, but he was just trying to say that, that he just really felt that there were more writers. But I also feel as though Tutorian is that, hood stories is not always black stories, you know? Because, like I said, black people, foundational black Americans, we come in a variety of statuses. Like I said, Fresh Prince was wealthy black people. The Cosbys were wealthy black people. What else? I can even go back as remember the TV show Julia with Diane Carroll?
Mm-hmm.
Like she was a high value black woman, and then people were still mad about the fact that that her husband had died in the war as a war hero and things like that. Well, then they were trying to say, well, why you got to take the black man out of the household and this and that? But he died a war hero. I mean, doesn't that still give it a sense of substance? And she still was able to remarry at the end of the show. You remember?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just feel like, it's like, but I kind of see where I felt like Jaleel was trying to say that we can only have hood stories in the within like television and things like that. But then even when we do hood stories or whatever, which do kind of send a message, it still gets, you know, like prime example, I don't know, Torian, if you're aware that Angela Stan King is taking shots at 50 Cent for all his TV shows that he has on Stars, talking about because it's so violent and things like that, and how 50 Cent is subliminally trying to push a gay LGBTQ message in his shows because 50 Cent always has a gay character in all his TV shows. Did you hear about that? And if so, what do you think about it?
A lot of shows nowadays actually have that. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you saw it, but like now the Oscars basically said that in order for a movie to get nominated for Best Picture, they have to meet a certain criteria in order for their movie to get nominated. So that means that they might have to have a Academy character in the movie. They might have to, of course, they have a black character in the movie or a woman, and it has to check off the quote unquote minority box. I don't know if you heard about that. That's something they just implemented, I think, last year or something like that.
I think I heard about that a little bit, but then at the same time, but I still feel as though Torian, I don't know whether you agree or disagree with me with this, but we have, academy-based people in our foundational black American community as well. Agreed or disagree?
Wait, say that again.
Like we have, gay characters in our community as well. I just feel like it's just more open.
Oh, trust and believe, they're everywhere, but the thing is, they're written differently. A white gay character is written differently than a black gay character, for sure, and you can definitely tell.
I mean,
like they'll have the black gay character acting like Billy Porter.
I don't know because I mean I don't know if you watched 50 Cent's Power Ghost. I mean the gay character
Oh, I know who you're
got his
talking
name.
about. You're talking about Drew.
Yeah, I mean Drew was nothing like Billy Porter. I mean Drew was just a stone. Yeah, he was a stone cold hood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
it's the same thing they did with Omar in the Wire.
yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't really equivalent Billy Porter's characters and what he plays with, Michael K. Williams, God rest his soul, when he was playing Omar, and the character that played Drew. I mean, these are completely opposite, people. I mean, characters,
Mm-hmm.
And then the crazy thing was that Michael K. Williams and the guy that played Drew, these were straight heterosexual males playing this and things like that.
Right.
Which would you ask if that that's just a nod to their acting capabilities and or just like, well, why won't they just get a gay character to play that a gay actor to play that gay character? Or do you think it makes a difference, Tori? If you can act and play this part, and if you're comfortable, then you should get the opportunity.
That was a question that they always been asking for a long time. Should they get someone who's actually living that lifestyle to play that role? But the thing is, can they actually do it? Because the thing is,
Right.
You just can't get the person to actually do it if they can't act.
Exactly. Yeah. But but going back to Jaleel, I just like I said, I can see where he was coming from, but I don't disagree. And then let's not forget, Torian, when they did have like hood shows on and things like that, it only lasted for like only a season, or before the season even finished, they said, nah, this show is getting canceled. Prime example, Eddie Murphy when he did the PJs, and what else? Remember the show South Central with Lorenz Tate that was on Fox? That was a hood TV show.
Yeah.
And it didn't last. Or let's not forget, Good Times would be considered a hood TV show, and look how long it was on the air.
Exactly.
Right. So yeah. So like I said, I see where Jaleel was coming from, but I don't agree. But it's always good for you to let me on here, Torian. I always appreciate you, just speaking the truth and things like that. And before I go, Torian, I just want to say that I personally think the Daily Show on Comedy Central, they need to hire you.
No, they don't.
I,
No, they
I, I
don't.
think you I think you would do way better than Jon Stewart, Tori. I think you should be that guy.
I mean, if you say so, but I personally would decline it. That's just me.
All right, I'm gonna let somebody go in. B1 else, come on, B1.
All right, next up we got Mr. Williams. What's going on? Mr. Williams, if you are there, we can't hear you.
Hello?
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, what's going on, everybody? Yeah, see, this is why Harvey couldn't stand Jaleel White right there, because he just says stuff like that. And like the last caller, I guess I can understand where he's coming from, but I don't know why a lot of people are coming out saying all this stuff now, just out the blue, sounding disrespectful to a lot of people. Then, some may not be like, man, whatever. And I think that's why what's her face couldn't stand Jaleel, the one that played the mother.
Oh, Jo Marie Payton.
Yeah, she.
Yeah,
apparently she couldn't stand him.
Yeah, I saw something that recently came out, but I didn't look into it. Apparently, and I had heard some things like for years that they couldn't really stand each other like that.
Yeah. Reginald VelJohnson never said anything. They asked him. He's like, "Well, I got along with him," but we already know what that means.
Yeah.
We already know what that means. And I remember he was talking about the character when he played Murder Urkel. And remember, like, I didn't know Reginald VelJohnson was actually a gay man, and he didn't, and he was uncomfortable with Jaleel playing that. I actually heard that a couple times, many times, that he didn't want Jaleel playing that role because I think he knew about the industry and putting black men in dresses. So,
yeah, and it's crazy because the first time we saw him play Myrtle Urkel, he was still a kid. He was still a minor. Like he was kind of still fresh into the Steve Urkel role. Right. And then we didn't see him play Myrtle Urkel again until he was much older.
Yeah, because I think his dad had issues with that too.
Yeah.
I think his dad really had issues with that character. But I forget I mentioned something in the comment section. Oh, I mean, if it really one thing, Steve got his break thanks to the character Harriet, because you remember she was in the show Perfect Strangers. That was her character was Harriet. What was the last name? Was it
Winslow?
Winslow. Well, I was about to say, I said Harriet Tubman, my bad. But yeah, her character was Perfect Strangers, the elevator operator. Then I guess they liked her and Carl's, chemistry as a couple. They just kind of took it from there. And even Family Matters, she was still the elevator operator for a while. It's like, so her character created the show that even got him started in acting, period. I mean, I heard he was doing commercials, but without the Steve Urkel character, he would have pretty much probably just been commercials and probably ended up fading away. She talked about how, I think Harvey mentioned this, on how he was picking on the sister that went upstairs and never really came back down.
Jamie Foxworth?
Yeah, because I guess he's always picked on her and she didn't like that also. Like, she really did not like that dude. But my opinion was he was young, and once the show centered around him, he got very big-headed and childish. I think that's just my opinion.
Oh, something happened with Mr. Williams' audio. He just went silent. I don't know what happened. Mr. Williams, is still there?
Yeah.
Okay. You just went.
Hello?
Yeah, just went. Yeah, you just went. Your sound just went out for briefly.
Okay, I think StreamYard is doing what it does. But I'm gonna hurry up and say this. If anybody who didn't grow up in the era of rock, y'all need to watch that.
Yeah, that was a very good show.
And what I got out of that is the character. Like if you notice the relationship between Andre and Rock, on how there was actually a level of respect there, even though Andre couldn't stand Rock. But at the same time, I think he respected the man he was.
Mm-hmm.
Because over time because like they wasn't friends, but when they would talk, it was on a level of respect. And Andre really never really pulled the trigger like he probably would have if it was anybody else, in my opinion. And plus the type of character he was, and him being without a father, to me, he kind of looked at Rock as that figure that he probably would have wanted growing up, because their chemistry was crazy, and that's the first time I ever seen Clifton Powell. And like, yeah, that was a great character build just between them two in general. And I wish we had more shows like that, but you know, and because somebody put in the comment section, Rock was basically too black, so they canceled it.
Yeah.
So, all right, man. Thanks for having me on. Talk to
No
y'all
problem.
later.
All right. Shout out to Mr. Williams. But before I bring up the next person, I have a couple of more super chats that came in. Shout out to Alonda. She says, "Is Jaleel White FBA?" As far as I know. Next, we got Sabadan. Shout out to you for the $9.99. He said, "Just when I see in the chat, everyone loved Family Matters. It's so disappointing." He made that comment. Exactly. We all watched that show. That's why we was like, where did this come from? Cat P1 PY2. Shout out to you for the 5. He said, "Jaleel starred as a cop in a hood comedy movie called Who Made the Potato Salad. It's entertaining." Okay. Alonda, shout out to you again for the 5. She said, "I used to get Michelle Thomas confused with Lark Voorhees, aka Lisa from Saved by the Bell. They look like the same person. They're like twins." And yeah, listen, Lark Voorhees and Michelle Thomas, those were black beauties back in the day, along with Maya Campbell from In the House. It's such a shame what happened to her. We got Robert Brown with the $5 super sticker. I appreciate it. And we also got DeMarcus with the 5. He says, "I wish In the House," speaking of Maya Campbell, "would have had more episodes because I love that show with LL Cool J and Debbie Allen." Yeah, the show was good. I would say the first 4 seasons were good. Even when Debbie Allen left and they brought Kim Wayans and Alfonso Ribeiro, aka Carlton, in to replace her, the show was still good. But that last season felt rushed, and it wasn't even on NBC anymore. They threw it on UPN, and they didn't have a full season. They only had like 5 episodes. I don't like how they ended the show. All right, next up we got Cosmo. What's going on?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Good afternoon. My whole stance with how Jaleel White comes off is just he feel like he put himself, and I'm not sympathizing with him, but I can see where he coming from. I don't like it though, bro. You had the option to say no to about getting yourself put in them dresses, but you said during the reunion you was gonna ham it up and you were gonna run with it. You was gonna basically turn eliminate to lemonade. And now he feel like he did all of this, and guess what? He ain't getting the notoriety that a show like Martin got. I love Martin. I loved Family Matter. I grew up watching Family Matter. It's just later on in it, it just became too much about the Urkel show, which turned me off.
Yeah.
But I know when that show first started, it was great because that show had let's say it had a family dynamic to it. There's so much spectrums to black sitcoms back in the day. We had our Martins, we had our Up All Nights, we had our Family Matters. We had a couple of things. I think it eats him up that he put himself through all of that, and the show still doesn't get he feel to him personally, he slighted that it doesn't get the notoriety that other black shows from back then get. So of course there's always the hood. They're gonna associate it to it, that whole mentality. Oh, it's because black people like hood stuff. No, that ain't it, bro. That ain't it, Jaleel.
Yeah, he practically was a show. The show ended up being censored around him. And the thing is like for him to sit up there and say, "Oh, I don't like the black community didn't embrace it." Like what? That's what I think that's what's so confusing about it. It's like, what do you mean black people didn't embrace the show? Black people was watching that show every week, every Friday night in that TGIF lineup.
But it got sillier as it got on later on.
I think what it is that when he came on as Steve Urkel, it was fine for him at that age. At that age, it worked. But then when he got older, like like
Voice
late
change.
teens, his voice started to change. that's exactly. And someone said it in the chat when he made the transformation chamber and he stepped out as Stefan. I think it got to the point where more people wanted to see him more as Stefan than Steve. It got to that point because it
Perfect,
showed him because it showed now he's grown, he's more mature.
perfect example. They could have if the writers, not blame the writers for this. They could have handled this, but of course they're gonna run with something that's safe. If the writers would have, they needed to look at Dwayne Wayne, different world. He went from the flip up glasses to a more serious man, and remember how Whitley didn't see him as such, and then she started seeing him as that because he matured.
Yeah,
That could have that evolution of Kadeem Hardison's Dwayne Wayne, how he played Dwayne Wayne. Like he was like everybody looked at him like, oh, who's this weirdo? Like somewhat like that. That's what the girls looked at him at, and then he started maturing.
yeah,
And that's how they should have handled him. He could have still been that nerdy guy, but maturing. Get dropped the suspenders, that laugh, all of that. You gotta grow out of all this stuff, but still keep that essence of who you are.
mm-hmm.
See, back then they didn't know how to do nerds. They've been watching too much of the 80s. What's the 80s series? Movie series, Revenge of the Nerds. They had a stereotype of what nerds were. And it was safe. And they just a lot of people he feel like a lot of people didn't embrace him because he basically just was just painted black. The same type of nerd. And that's why I think he got that's that thing in his mind. But hey, I can't speak for him. I'm just saying, like, bro, like, your show got more recognition than you think it is. It's just because he feels slighted because it didn't get it. He see how we accept other shows. We talk about other shows, and it's funny because those moments stand out. They hilarious. This is called sitcoms for a reason, situational comedies, and a lot of comedic situations came from Fresh Prince. Like case in point, look at the episode where Carlton started feeling himself. He started dancing on stage, and his mother called him. He said, "Mommy," that
Yeah,
shit was that like funny. It was funny, like, and then it can go from being serious with Will getting shot, or like this one you mentioned when they was at college, and Carlton had to check Glenn Plummer. You know, they
mm-hmm.
acted. You know, remember that was him. He played that. I remember that. That show. See, Fresh Prince. Now looking back and thinking about it, that show has so much range.
It did.
It has so much range, and I felt at first Family Matters had that, and then it just became the writers turned it into
and,
the
and, and
Urkel
it's
show.
and it's crazy too because all the shows that we mentioned, out of all of them, Family Matters stayed on the longest. It had 9 seasons. Um, uh, Living Single, it came out in '93 and got canceled in '97 or '98. I think '97 though. And then Martin
Hmm.
came out in '92 and got canceled in '97 or '6.
I think it
Um,
ran. Yeah, it ran. Martin ran for
yeah,
like a few seasons, I believe. Like I mean,
yeah,
like
yeah,
maybe
but
5 or 6 seasons.
yeah, but I think out of all of them, I think Family Matters had the longest run, which is good, especially during that time. You gotta think, like I said before, back in those days, that's when shows had 22 episode seasons. They don't do that anymore.
Nah, but I see it like all of that, all the the longest running series, out of those back in the '90s. But when people don't get the recognition that they feel that they were going for, they feel a certain way. We could correlate that right now to the whole Drake and Kendrick situation. Drake, his streams, his this, his that, he's still feeling a sort of way because he lost the respect of the fan base. He lost a lot of respect. And I think that's what Jaleel White doesn't feel respected. And I'm like, yo, it's better to just keep your mouth shut.
Exactly.
But that's how I'm going to end it right there. Thanks for having me up.
No problem. Shout out to Cosmo for coming up. Next, we got JDW. What's going on?
Yo, what's up? Do you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, so salute to the Black media. Salute to you, Toreen. Again, well, my take on Jaleel is that you should be grateful, man. First of all, Family Matters was the only black show in the '90s that lasted the longest. That's a fact. I just did the wish. It lasted longer than any other black show until 2000. Okay, and a lot of people don't know this. Jaleel White also voiced Sonic the Hedgehog
Yeah, we
for
spoke
about
about that
three
earlier.
for about 3-4 years. So, I mean, he's the only black person in history to voice, arguably, in my opinion, the most iconic video game character. I mean, the only thing that Mario has over Sonic is that Mario has a console. Sonic lost the Sega console pretty much depleted after 2000. But, you know, looking at this whole Jaleel White situation, he knows he should be grateful because the reason why in my opinion, Fame Minds lasted long was because black people. We watched the show traditionally, so he should on that. Um, my thing is that a lot of the shows like the brother before had range, so we can't really count Family Matters and put in that range category because again they had too many white writers and producers of that show. There was no creativity. And one thing you need to understand about white folks, they know how to steal. They don't create, they steal. So uh it's a tricky thing to see, but man, I lost train of thought. I was trying to get off topic. Damn, but forget about it. But like I said before, man, Jaleel White, he should be grateful, man. You know, a lot of these actors who are coming up nowadays, they're not getting the credit that they deserve. But we as a community, we remember these great shows and these great projects that was made. And it's gonna be the last of the dying breed because unfortunately we got Tyler Perry. And Tyler Perry can't make a good movie to save his life. And that's just the bottom line. So again, like I said before, just be grateful that the character Steve Urkel is iconic to the black community. Will we have disagreements or not? It doesn't change the fact that it's a staple in the mindsets of black media. And I'll land there.
I appreciate you coming up. Let me see. I think I got another super chat that came in. Yeah, shout out to Alonda for the 2. She said, "Ladies went crazy when Urkel turned the stuff on." They sure did. And shout out to Chris G for the $1.99. He said, "Torian, I'm proud of you. Proud of you. Keep doing your thing. I appreciate you." Oh, let me take that off the screen. All right, Miss Nisi, what's going on?
No hurricane.
I forgot, and I'm still stuck in yesterday. Hurricane Nisi, what's going on?
Good afternoon, Tori, and good afternoon, family in the chat.
What's going on?
Okay, I'm gonna speak as a boomer. I remember Family Matters when it first came on, and I enjoyed the show.
Mhm.
But once they made Steve Urkel's character the center point of the show, it went left. That's my opinion only. Also, I would say that Jaleel White is being very self-centered, ungrateful. I mean, after all, we wouldn't know who his ass was if not for that show. Now, am I lying?
Nope.
People need to recognize and count their blessings. He made the choice to be an actor. Sounds to me like sour grapes. And that tends to be the issue with most child actors. It doesn't transition over into adult film roles.
Yeah, because I remember that Jaleel White, and some of y'all may remember it or not. He had a show that was on UPN. It was very, very short lived. I think the name of the show was called Grown Ups or something like that. It was a very short lived show. I don't even think it lasted an entire season. And that's when I knew that he was not going to be able to shake that Steve Urkel image because that was the first show he did after Family Matters had got canceled. It was in the early 2000s. Some of y'all might remember it, but it was a very, very short-lived series. It didn't even, I can't remember how many episodes it was, but it wasn't a whole season. Like they pulled the plug because the ratings were not good.
Well, he was pigeonholed. He is forever identified as Steve Urkel. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, dude, grow a few and stop tripping. That's all I got to say.
Appreciate you for coming up.
Bye bye.
All right, someone okay. TR5 said Grown Ups came out in '99. Okay, so it came out the year after Family Matters got canceled, which means he was most likely filming Grown Ups while the last season of Family Matters was on. Probably most likely, depending on where in '99 the show came out. Of the show came out in like September of '99. It was probably early '99 when they were filming it. And see, that's the thing. He was coming fresh off of Family Matters and going right into a different type of show, and the audiences didn't like it. Shout out! Oh, we got some more super chats. Shout out to Neo Panther for the 5. He said, Cherie Johnson is a friend of mine. There's a lot of public. There's a lot the public doesn't know. I did. Oh yeah, you sure did. And for those of y'all who don't know who Cherie Johnson is, Cherie Johnson played Maxine on Family Matters. I remember you was telling me about that. All right, next up we got Blackbird. What's going on?
Yo, what up, Tori?
What's going on?
I think I sense a bit of um I sense a bitter bitterness and maybe resentment towards the black community when it comes when it comes to him. I don't know why, but this is like the second time he's taking a little small jab at us. The first time it was a couple of months ago when he got married to the white woman, and
Yeah.
he shared a video on his Instagram page of Will Smith talking about how he was trying to get with Pepper and Salt from the group Pepper and Salt.
Salt and Pepper.
Yeah, Salt and Pepper. Will Smith shared a video. He shared a video of Will Smith talking about that Pep didn't like him because she felt he was a lame or square out of her league. And he wrote in his caption like, "Yeah, black women didn't like me, and they still don't like." He said something to that shit like, "This is why I'm getting with a white woman because black women don't like me," and that kind of went viral. This is second time like taking a little jab at the black community. Now he's saying, black people only care about gangster stuff, but that's so indicative because we have different world. We love the different world. Like that was about college. The kids was in college.
Yeah, like a different world made a lot of
Yeah.
I remember back in the day, they said the HBCU enrollment
Right.
rate went up because of. I'm gonna be honest with you. When a when a different world was on, because the thing is, when a different world came out in like the first season, I wasn't even born yet in the season where Denise was like the main character. I wasn't when I was born. That was when they were when you were starting to get the new class was coming in, like Jada's character and like the other characters started coming in. And those, in my opinion, that was probably the best part of the show.
Season,
in my opinion, was when she came on. But I remember when I was younger, I used to think Hillman was a real school. I really thought Hillman College was a real school. And then when I found it, because I saw the paraphernalia, I saw the clothes, and I was like, oh, it's not a real school. And then why do they got the sweaters and the stuff like that? It's like, oh, I was like, because they're doing, because it was just marketing for the show. And by the way, I'm sure if you go online and just type in Hillman College paraphernalia, you can find some, so you can actually buy it and actually wear it.
Still to this day, yeah,
as if it was a real school. I might actually do that, even though I went to an HBCU myself. But yeah, that school made the HBCU enrollment rate go up. And I think that was Bill Cosby's intention.
Exactly. So it don't make it's not adding up. And then when you think about the quote unquote urban shows like Martin wasn't a hood show. Martin was he was a radio host. Gina was a marketing we didn't know what Tommy did. And
and Cole, he cleaned planes.
Right. So that wasn't a hood show. What's that? The Fresh Prince wasn't a hood show. they was talking about college.
If anything, it's all in the theme song. Will
Right.
Smith came from the hood and they got him out, and he went to Bel Air to be
Exactly.
raised with his wealthy family, where his uncle was a lawyer, then a judge. His aunt was a professor.
Exactly. Like we can go down. I could keep going down the line. So it did when he said that, I was like, oh, so this the second time. You know how you be saying on some of your video, you be like, I gotta keep an eye out. I think Jaleel is one of them people you gotta keep an eye on, because let's see if he gonna take another swipe at the community, because this the second time. So
Yeah, so I think that's why I always tell people that when someone does something like this, they're now on the radar.
right.
Jaleel White. And it's funny because when I posted up the thumbnail on my community tab to basically announce I was going to do this live today, someone has said, "I'm surprised you didn't turn this into a bed bucking video." I said
Yeah.
he almost made it there, but I said I'm not going to put him there just yet. But like I said, he's on the radar. But if he says something slick again like this, he will be.
Yeah, when with our people, when they go jump on that other side, it's like they got to swipe at the community to show they loyalty to the person they with, or something. I don't know. It's really weird. But that's all I had to say. Thank you for letting me up.
No problem. All right, I'm gonna bring up one last person, and that is the wacky world of TV. What's going on?
Hey, what's going on? What's going on? It's the wacky world of OTV. What's up?
Of OTV. Okay, what's going on?
Yeah. Oh man. The question is this. I have two questions concerning this topic.
Mhm.
One, what was Jaleel smoking when he was saying this? And number
Good
two, does he have
out there in LA? Out there in LA, who knows what it could have been just about anything.
Exactly. Two, his second question is, does he have any undisputed documentation to prove that there was not a large amount of black people watching his show? Okay,
Exactly.
Does he have any of the ratings to say that the numbers were low within the inner city or within African Americans? Because I grew up around that time. I just turned 40 years old, right?
Mhm.
So that was my childhood era. And I remember and I grew up in the inner city. And I remember almost everybody and their mama couldn't wait to be home by 8 p.m. on Friday night in order to watch Family Matters on ABC. All right.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what he's talking about, because it was so popular. The show Family Matters was so popular amongst the inner city. Yeah, but I think that what he doesn't understand is that, okay, there were other black shows that sort of resonated a little bit more with Black America, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because shows like The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or Martin, etc., even Living Single,
Yeah.
they had episodes which Black American uniquely relate to, right? In
Yeah.
which Family Matters, even though they had maybe in my opinion, 1 or 2 episodes that had such a theme, but the thing is, being that it was produced by Miller Boyett Productions, and Miller Boyett want to stay along the lines of making it relatable to the average American family.
Exactly.
And Miller Boyett, once again, the producers of Family Matters, wanted to keep Family Matters within that line and did not want to tippy-toe too much when it comes to racial issues, even though there were 1 or 2 episodes relating to such. You was about to say something, Torian? My fault.
No, and it's funny, and I don't know if people remember this, but do y'all remember when there was an episode of Full House where Jaleel White played Steve Urkel in an episode? Like, he made a cameo appearance on one of the episodes.
I remember that.
It was a character. There was a character that was on there. That was friends with, I forgot what character it was, and she was talking about how she had this cousin who was nerdy and everything. Like, it was a little black girl, and she was just on that for that one episode. And then a knock on the door came, and then the Uncle Jesse character opened up the door, and who was on the other side? It was Jaleel White and Steve Urkel, and the crowd went crazy because this was maybe about, he was on Family Matters for maybe about 2 seasons in by this point, so his popularity had already went through the roof. What I found to be very interesting is that they plucked him from, because people don't know that Full House was on NBC. That was an NBC show. A lot of people thought Full House was part of TGIF.
No, it was on ABC. It was on
Oh,
ABC.
are you sure? I thought okay. I thought it was on NBC.
It was on
Fresh Prince was on NBC.
yeah. Fresh Prince was on
Okay.
NBC. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they had plucked him from Family Matters and they put him on Full House, which, as we all know, Full House was an all-white show. Now, I
Yeah.
find it interesting they didn't pluck him from Family Matters to be on another black show.
Right. See, the thing is, right here is
That
that
was the crossover. That I think that was the crossover right there.
yeah, that was a crossover. But the thing is that Full House and Family Matters was produced by the same people, which was Miller Boyette.
Yeah.
Yeah, Miller Boyette production. So that's why they were able to do that crossover. And then, but I don't think they were able to do that with other black shows that was not produced by Miller Boyette, because Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was produced by, Quincy Jones and his production team.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how that would have gone. Quincy Jones might probably ask for a lot of money if say, okay, if you wanna place your character on this show.
Yeah, because they actually did, because remember, it was an episode of Family Matters where they did do a crossover, because it was in the later seasons where they had Uncle Phil be on the other side of the door, and Carl had opened the door and he was there. And the thing is, they kind of broke the fourth wall, because it wasn't one of those things that I don't think it was in the script. And then the actor who played Carl looked into the audience and said, "Ladies and gentlemen," and he said James Avery's real name. He said James Avery from Fresh Prince. So that had the crowd go crazy. So that was a little crossover thing right there. They actually kind of did the same thing in a different world, but it wasn't for another show. It was the episode, because Whitley was obsessed with Denzel Washington. I mean, she had his picture all on the wall and everything, and it was an episode where she's like literally holding his picture, and then all of a sudden, like, Denzel Washington opens up the door. She doesn't know that he's there, but it wasn't part of the script, and so when she turns around, she sees him, she literally screams and runs off the set. So So I think that was just something that they did to surprise Jasmine Guy.
Yeah. And what you talking about with James Avery, when he was on when he featured towards the tail end of that episode of Family Matters, it was not part of the script, and it was funny because within the script, it was when the little boy, the actor who played the little boy Richie at that time, he had his friend come over, and his friend said, looked at Carl Winslow and said, "You're right. He does look like Uncle Phil from the Fresh Prince." And it was a funny thing. Yeah. But I remember, like, the show Family Matters was considered so cool at that time, to the point of the fact that a lot of people from my neighborhood found out that the actor who played Carl Winslow, which is Reginald Val Johnson, grew up not too far from where we grew up in our neighborhood. And we was like, oh, wow. Oh, wow. Yeah. And, what a lot of people don't know is that the actor Reginald Val Johnson, aka Carl Winslow, he went to high school with the Ultimate Warrior and what's that guy, that the adult actor, Jeremy something. Yeah.
Jeremy, he's an actor.
Yeah, he's a dang. I forgot who he was, but he did go to high school with the Ultimate Warrior. Yeah. Ron Jeremy. Yeah, Ron Jeremy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They all three of them went to high school together. But that's far beyond. But what I'm trying to say is that the reason why I made that point is because that show was so cool within our community, is that once we realized that one of the actors who played in the show was from where we was from, our neighborhood, we had a large level of pride.
Yeah, I remember. And for me, I think for a lot of people who wasn't familiar with Reginald Val Johnson before Family Matters, remember when he was in Die Hard.
Yes.
And ironically, Die Hard came out the same year that Family Matters first season started. So he had Family Matters and Die Hard come out the same year.
Yes. I believe I think I saw this documentary on Family Matters years ago where the producers targeted Reginald Val Johnson to play Carl Winslow because of the role that he played in Die Hard.
Okay.
Because remember, Die Hard, he was a cop, and in Family Matters, he was a cop.
Yeah.
So the producers felt that he would be the best fit for the character called Winslow. Yeah, man. Yeah. But all right, Torian. Thank you for inviting me on here.
No
But
problem.
I think that Jaleel actually needs to sit back and take a look at the crazy thing that he stated, because what he stated was not true at all, especially when it comes here, because I know, because I lived that era. That was my childhood, the 90s. I'm a 90s kid, 80s baby and 90s kid. I grew up on Family Matters. Okay, so that's not true at all what he stated about how it was not popular amongst the so-called black community. It was very popular. But
Right.
anyhow, have a great day, sir.
You too.
Once again, thank you for inviting me on.
No problem. All right, y'all. So that was the last person to come up. Shout out to the Wack World of OTV for rounding it out. And shout out to each and every person that came up and spoke. Shout out to everybody who contributed to the super chat. And if I got any cash apps, I'll check them. But that is going to bring this stream to a close. We have another midday stream locked in the books. There won't be any more commentaries again until Monday. Monday will be a premiere video and it'll be a 6 p.m. live. So definitely be on the lookout for both of those. With that being said, everybody in the chat who's here now, everyone who was here, who's no longer here, and those who are catching the playback, I hope each of you have a very good rest of your Saturday, good rest of your weekend, and we will be back on here on Monday. Be safe and be one.